Hi everybody, and welcome to our Exploring English Language and Culture Facebook Live session. I'm joined, as last week and for the rest of the course, by Jenny and David. Hi both.
Hello Neil.
Hello everyone.
And we're here to talk to you about what's been happening on the Exploring English course on Future Learn. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then you'll find links to it in the post here and you can check it out. If you're on the course, then I hope you're ready with lots of questions to ask us. We're going to be here for the next 30 minutes. Our main topic this week, which Jenny's going to tell you a little bit more about in a moment, is music. But of course, any questions about anything to do with learning English or UK culture are fine, okay? But let's get started. Jenny, over to you. What have we been doing this week?
Well, thanks Neil. We've been doing loads this week. It's been a wonderful week of music, talking all about music and how we use music to learn English and what kind of music we like. So that started at the beginning of the week with just general discussion, lots of great bands and singers mentioned. So I've had a couple of learners asking, I'd like to get into British music and I'm not very sure. Can you recommend me a band, a good British band or singer? So I'd suggest go to the first couple of steps this week and you'll find so many recommendations. Also, we had a great step this week. I think it's one of the favourite steps, and it's where you have got the opportunity to record yourself singing a song. And oh my goodness, there are some works of art on that step. So if you haven't already listened to some of the learners and educators singing songs, then do try that and try recording yourself as well if you fancy. At the last count, we're still waiting for Neil to record his song, but he likes to keep us waiting.
Well, Paul and Ringo haven't answered him yet, have they? He's trying to take the place of John Lennon and the Beatles, I think.
I'll get there before the end of the week, I promise. I've heard David's. I haven't listened to yours yet, Jenny. What did you sing?
I sung the Up Hellia song. I don't have a good singing voice, so I got my children to help me.
Okay.
I
have never heard the Up Hellia song, I don't think either, so that's something we look forward to. And David, what were you singing?
I sang a Robert Burns song called I Walk in O. Jenny mentioned Robert Burns and Burns Night in her end of week video last week, so that's why I chose that song.
And good link for everything, because it links to our Literature Week coming up in week
Yes.
4. It links to our 4 Nations of the United Kingdom week and everything else to do with that. So that's great. Okay, and any other high spots for you this week, David?
On the course or just in life in general?
If you have some in life, then that would be good too.
It is a very beautiful day today. I think I complained about weather on the previous one. It's actually disturbingly warm. On the course, I think Jenny pretty much covered it all. It is fantastic listening to people sing. I think it's great fun, and clearly people are enjoying it. And I think towards the end of the week, when people are talking about the festivals, is also interesting. Some people have never been to one and have clearly never intend to. and some people are wishing they could. And I really like the Glastonbury Festival map app that there's a link to. It was disturbing to me to see how big it is compared to where I live. So.
Speaking of weather, it seems we're in the opposite, because it's been snowing here for the first time so far, which is great. It's been lovely, nice, big, powdery, big, it's lovely. Okay, but let's get started. As I said, we're here for a little time to answer all of your questions. As we've been speaking about, music is the main topic, but anything that you want to ask about is fine. We have some questions people have already asked, so let's start straight away with some of those. And our first question comes from Sharif Ahmed, who's saying, I do believe that learning English with the help of songs is beneficial, but some people don't like it for some reasons. I'm not sure if he means some teachers or some students here. And the question is, should we convince them, or is it better to find other options to learn with then? Jenny, what would you say to this?
Yeah, I mean, I have come across learners, even on this course, who in the first couple of steps have said, oh, you know, they're not really into music. They maybe don't like music particularly. And if that's the case, I would say it's maybe not the best way for you to learn English, because if you don't like any kind of, you know, means of you know, any type of expression, any kind of form of expression, then it's probably not the best thing to try and learn with. So, you know, yeah, if you don't like watching films, then it wouldn't be a very good idea to try and learn English through watching films. However, there's a few people who've said, oh, you know, I've never thought about learning English through music before. And if it's just that you've never considered it, or you think it's maybe not a very serious way of learning, but you like music, then I would say, well, give it a try. And I mean, this week is a great opportunity to do that, because there's so many good suggestions. So many learners have shared their really good tips for learning English through music. And we're also sharing links as well to some websites which can help you. So if you're not sure about it, give it a try.
I think you made some very good points there. I mean, I think the first part is something that we say all the time, is that, you know, really focus on the things that you enjoy doing, because that will motivate you. And yeah, if you really don't like music, then or songs, then I can see that could be a problem. But you know, the later part you're talking about was something else, that sometimes you said about people not thinking it's serious, and sometimes people, you know, we get questions like that from people who are saying, oh, you know, the language is not so good, or the grammar is not good, and it's not serious. What would you say to that, David?
Well, sometimes they're correct, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't use it or listen to it. There are many songs where the grammar is not absolutely perfectly correct. For example, you often have to change the word order or the actual word that you're using in order to fit the music. This is poetic license, we tend to call it. It's not unique to music. It also happens in literature or poetry. I think it's a thing to be aware of. If I know lots of teachers are on a course and listen to these videos, it's maybe something to think about when choosing a song. If you're going to use a song to illustrate a grammar point, for example, make sure the song really does give a good example of it, not one that gives a bad example. Perhaps at very high levels, you could choose the one where the grammar is not quite right, because they could explain what's the difference between the normal rule, the standard rule, and what's happening in the song. So horses for courses, isn't it? It all depends what you're trying to do.
Rewrite the lyric in a grammatically correct formal English style or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that would work. Well, might be difficult, but
yeah. Okay, I mean, because it does link with this question as well, which came from BF, slightly different but a similar theme, which is saying that yeah, you know, we accept that it can help with pronunciation skills and learning some new vocabulary, but what about sentences? Because some lyrics have absolutely no meaning in real life. And it's true, some lyrics are just nonsense. They're just words that are put together to fit the tune. But is there some benefit, some use in that as well, Jenny?
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting this week because we're actually, we've got quite a few teachers on this course, and it's been great looking at some of the suggestions given by teachers. They've actually suggesting particular songs to help with particular structures and grammatical elements of English. So there was one teacher, for example, suggested a Beyonce song. Forgotten the song, I'm sorry, to help with conditional structures. So, I mean, yeah, even just looking through I'm trying to go through them.
Must be If I Were a Boy, no? Surely.
Yes, that's the one. I'm not very up on Beyonce.
See, you can't catch me out with a Beyonce song.
I didn't have you down as a Beyonce fan, Neil.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh.
But yeah, so many good suggestions for teaching specific things. I'm just trying to work through the course and make a note of them, because I'm getting lots of good ideas for my own teaching.
Anything you'd like to add to that, David, before we move on?
I think it doesn't matter if I mean, if you're talking about beginners, that was specifically in the question, maybe, you know, one of the reasons to use songs is to encourage people to speak, to form the sounds of words. And perhaps, you know, one of the biggest problems people have when they're learning English, many people have, is just getting their tongue around the sound. So I think music is one of the ways, it's not the only way, of course, but it's one of the ways that people can get used to the sounds of English when they're just singing along. And in this case, the fact that it might mean nothing, or even that it may be slightly incorrect grammar or choice of word, doesn't matter, because it's just part of building up the competency of being able to speak.
Mm. And again, another thing you mentioned there as well is also confidence as well, and it can really help just with that. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to some of the questions that are coming in now. Here's a very good one from Harry Burkholder, who's saying, it's a bit long, so but when we listen to a song, should we immediately look up words in the dictionary, or should we listen first and then look up in the dictionary? Now, we can start out with songs. I think this applies to many things, to reading, to films, to almost anything where you're receiving information in this way. So, Jenny, what would you say to this?
Well, my suggestion would be to try listening a few times and seeing if you can make a guess at what it means, going by the context that the unknown word is in, the words that surround it, and then check your guess is correct by looking at the dictionary. And this way it will actually help you to remember the word. Going through that process of working it out and then checking will be much more memorable to you than if you just go straight for the dictionary.
Yeah. And David, you're nodding.
I am, yes, I can confirm that. I was nodding. Well, I was thinking also, if he's listening to a song, I don't think he's got time to look up the words. So I suspect that Harry has cheated and checked the lyrics on the internet. So maybe to add one step before what Jenny said is actually try understanding just the sounds first before you worry about looking it up. Maybe you didn't understand it because actually you've heard the wrong words. So do that as a first step, then find the lyrics perhaps.
Well, talking about that, I mean, I guess that's something that's maybe worth mentioning that I've come across quite often is that the internet, many of the internet lyric sites are not 100% accurate as well, and very often also, especially on YouTube, where they have automatically generated subtitles that can be completely wrong, sometimes comedically so. So I think one thing that I would do if I was a teacher or learner is, if possible, try and find official lyrics from the official website or the official artist website or publisher website or something like that, or a reliable website, because many times I've found lyrics to be sometimes slightly different and sometimes very different, so it changes the meaning. And
I can give one other supporting argument to not looking up words I just thought of. One of my bands I like is called Pulp, and always on inside the CD they had the lyrics, but there was always an instruction: don't read the lyrics while listening to the music.
Right.
You're meant, because I think the idea is you should immerse yourself in the music first. It's an enjoyable listening experience before you worry about any particular word or sentence being said. So I think as part of maybe not your language experience, but just if you're listening and enjoying music, you should concentrate on that first.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned at the beginning that applies to like films and TV and everything else, books as well, because it's the same as the music with Pulp.
Yes.
It gets in the way of the enjoyment quite a bit if you're stopping every 5 words to check a word in the dictionary. And
yes.
So
imagine doing that at a concert, asking the singer to stop. So I've got to look this up in my dictionary.
Okay, just a little note here. Monica Batista, in the same boat as me, hasn't listened to Jenny yet, but is looking out for it. So.
Well, you wouldn't say that, Monica, if you heard what my children were saying about my singing last night. They were very critical.
That's why I don't have children. They just listen.
Yes. Well, actually, now I only have my cat here, and she's deeply critical of my singing. If I start singing anything at all, she just comes up and basically bites me or scratches me to make me stop.
Oh my goodness.
Which,
really?
as a musician, makes life quite difficult because I get very little chance. Okay. Talking about, this is off the topic of music, but it's still on the topic of doing things that you enjoy and everything else. And this is from Shamsuddin Roshan, who's saying, I'm fond of watching wrestling and it seems a great way of learning English. watching wrestling, yes. I'm not sure actually doing wrestling would help your English much. Stop. But okay. But as we know, they speak informal words that are not suitable to speak in everyday life. How to identify which word is informal? That's a good question, because it's sometimes difficult to know. And I know that I've done this, and I know every language learner has done this at a point. They've heard a phrase and used it thinking it's fine, and then someone said, "You can't say that."
Yeah.
So, which of you would like to give Shamsuddin some advice on how to kind of?
I think I'm probably the wrestling expert here.
Okay. From the three of us,
I didn't know that they spoke to each other while they were wrestling.
I think he's talking about American wrestling, where they have lots of, acting, as it were, taking on, shouting to the crowd,
Oh,
etc.
yeah.
to be honest, David, you're the only one of us that knows anything about this.
I may have exhausted all my knowledge in explaining that there, but anyway, shall I continue?
Please.
Well, I think you're halfway to the answer to the question by the fact that you're aware that they are probably using informal words. The situation that you've heard the words in, or the expression, is already a clue. I mean, a wrestling match is not the place you would go to hear a formal lecture. So you can guess that most of the words are going to be informal. That doesn't necessarily mean they are bad words, that you can't use in other situations, but certainly it's a clue they're informal. I think if you were genuinely worried that something might be offensive that they have said, well, you've got a couple of options depending on your situation. One would be to look them up in the dictionary, like Jenny suggested before the previous answer. Many dictionaries will highlight after the word if it's rude or vulgar or offensive in some way. It's normally actually like in brackets after the word, often before the definition. If you happen to know other English speakers, ask them, look, I heard this word, is it okay to use this? Or when can I use it? Maybe it is okay to use it, but only in particular situations, shall we say. And so I think that's it, looking at situations and checking.
Okay. Yeah, as I say, I don't think Jenny or I have got anything to add at all.
Come on, you must have heard of The Undertaker. No? Big Daddy from British Wrestling.
I don't even have any.
Daddy, yeah.
I don't even have any wrestling PlayStation games. Nothing. Okay, just a few more things popping up. I'll just go through these quite quickly. This from Geeta Sharma, who's saying, "Hi, can you please share some songs?" The answer is yes. Can you tell Geeta a little bit about this, Jenny, about how we're going to do this?
Oh, yes. Yes. At the end of this week, there is an opportunity to share songs from your country, and these are made into a playlist for your listening pleasure that you will be able to enjoy forever, and you'll be introduced to songs, learners' favorite songs, all of the learners on your course from all over the world.
Okay, and Luisa de Miranda is recommending a website that we also recommend on the course that I really like as well, lyricstraining.com. You should just check it out. I mean, we include the link on the course, but basically you can use it as a karaoke machine, which is fun, or you can use it to test your listening at different levels, and you listen and complete the lyric as you listen, and every time you get something wrong, it pauses until you get it right and then continues. So it's a fun way to kind of learn the lyrics and then sing them at the end. So that's great. Okay, moving on. People joining us from all over, as usual. I'll tell you from where in a moment once we get to the next question. No. Okay, a couple of dissenting voices from D. Nui, who's saying basically something we were talking about earlier. I think songs are not the best options to learn grammar. They can sometimes spoil the grammatical rules. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But as David said earlier, even if the grammar is not correct, there's still ways that they can help and be useful. So, okay. Another question from Sharif Ahmed here. As teachers, because as Jenny mentioned earlier, we seem to have quite a few teachers on the course this time, and quite a lot of questions from teachers. So this is one. I mean, we talk about music. but just listening to music on its own, like just watching a movie on its own, might not be very productive or very helpful in developing your language skills. So what are some activities that people can do with music, can do with songs, that could maybe focus on specific things and help them with that? Jenny, this is not wrestling, so over to you.
I know about everything else, it's not wrestling. I think choosing songs that have more more that you can discuss is a really good idea and a good start for building activities on that. So, you know, okay, this is an example. You could use the Beatles, She's Leaving Home, which is a kind of almost like a story within a song about a person leaving home to discuss, you know, family relationships. You could listen to the song. You could maybe, depending on what aspect of the song you wanted to focus on, you could delete some of the words and students could listen. Or to make it more challenging, you could ask them to try and write down maybe a whole verse, just listen and write down, and then work with a group and see if they can discuss and negotiate together what was actually being sung. And then you can, you know, if there is a kind of story within the song, you could then build onto that, do something like a role play, you know, what happens next, what do the characters in the song say to each other after the event. There's so many things you can do, but I mean, what I would recommend is finding a song that has some kind of deeper meaning or story, and then you can really do anything with it. You can build as much onto it as you want to.
Okay, so that's one thing. That's lots of, as you say, lots of songs have stories. Lots of songs are like little films, or you know, little narratives, or just individual scenes. So you can do a lot with that creativity as well as understanding. David, what about non-story songs? What can we do with some of those?
Well, I was going to add something to, because I had a very specific exercise I've done with the song that Jenny mentioned, where I had a picture version of the lyrics of the song, but I told them they were going to listen to a song, but not what the song was called. So they couldn't check on their phones what the real story was. And then the students had to discuss in pairs, you know, which picture goes first, what's the story, you know, put it in order, then explain what story they had created. Then you can listen to the song and put them in the order that you heard in the song. So, you know, as you said, Jenny, generating a lot of different language skills out of one text, basically, without even always having to look at the text. And I forgot what your question was now.
Well, I mean, that's so we've talked about that kind of thing, and some of that is, you know, like a receptive skills in learning, understanding, comprehension, and ordering a story. Some of it Jenny mentioned is like role playing or storytelling to continue the story or give some more about that. How about some other things that maybe don't follow a story-based song, but maybe can still be useful for people? I mean, you mentioned things about repetition earlier and things like that.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of pop songs repeat the same words or same phrases again and again and again. So this is very similar to things like drilling that many teachers like to do in class, but perhaps repeating the words of the song is more interesting. Jenny, as our resident rapper, can probably explain the importance of intonation and how songs can help you with that if you create your own songs and lyrics that go with it. Actually, one of my colleagues was doing that the other day. Sadly, the wall was very thin, so that's how I know. And what else can you do with songs that are not directly? I think just in general, singing along can give you, I mean, we mentioned this before, but it is confidence, but it's also just gives you a freedom to express yourself. Actually, many people say they have no one to speak English to. Well, singing in the shower is one of the most natural human activities you can ever do, and it's good English practice. So, you know, whether it's in a classroom, outside the classroom, it's just natural to want to sing along to a song.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are lots of pronunciation things that can help with that for sure. Moving on to another question, kind of related in a similar way. This question is, will it be too unnatural or poetic to use song expressions in everyday life? I mean, this goes back to appropriate language again. We talked earlier about language that's maybe not suitable because of being too informal or vulgar or offensive or something like that. But then you've got the other extreme where language is just too beautiful to be used every day. What do you think of this?
Well, help me if you can with this one, Neil. You didn't get my Beatles reference. Never mind.
I know this is what do you call it, heresy and these things, but I was never really a Beatles fan. So
right, kick them out.
Yeah. But what do you think? I mean, it's the same as with literature again in poetry. I mean, it's how to choose. And going back to the earlier question about even wrestling. How can people, identify what language is useful language that they can use, and what language is maybe a little bit too much one way or the other, either, too informal or slangy, or too poetic to be used in this way? Any suggestions on this, Jenny?
Well, I'd just like to say, for starters, that if somebody said to me, "You are the sunshine of my life," it hasn't happened much recently, but I'd be delighted. So I think that as long as it's nice and it's not rude language, I think people will generally enjoy it, and a lot of people really enjoy trying to spot song references. So it's a great way of finding people who've got similar musical tastes. If you slip a little song reference in there, and then their eyes might light up, and they might say, the Beatles.
Or the opposite, like just happened where you flushed me out with my anti-Beatles position there.
Exactly. So it's a great
way. It's very useful.
So yeah, I mean, it's and otherwise, I mean, I think the only real issue would come about if it was maybe inappropriate or rude in some way. And then I think, following David's advice from the previous a few questions ago about just checking, asking an English speaker if it's okay to use this, is probably the best approach.
Okay.
And I think it connects to what we talked about, about connecting a language to culture. That very often, like the song you mentioned about the sunshine of my life, I mean, it's a cultural reference as well. If you don't know the song, it doesn't make that much. I mean, it's a very nice thing to say to someone, but it doesn't have the same resonance. So I guess it is a way of how language and culture go together. And there are certain words that someone says to me, I just naturally think of a song lyric, because it's not necessarily a song I like, a bit like Neil with the Help reference I made, but if someone says something to me like "so true," I always immediately think of Spandau Ballet song.
Oh yeah.
There you go. See, I found one. I think I was Spandau Ballet fan now as well.
Yeah. Okay.
It's going very badly for Neil.
We have a good comment here, just like a confirmation from Nora Soto del Canto, who's saying, this is Nora from Chile, songs are an amazing source of learning. As a teacher of EFL, I've met students who speak great English, and when I ask them how they've learned that much, they just say, I've listened to English songs all my life. And I think we've all met students like this who it's like we've spoken about before, about how video games can help with this, and how wrestling, like we were talking about earlier, can help with this. But yeah, I mean, don't underestimate how much help songs can be, I think, if you really get into it. Okay. Okay. From Cecilia Intagli, do you happen to have a column in which students can find songs that they can listen to and find grammar content? Actually, yes, is the answer to that question, but I don't have it to hand right now. On our Teaching English page, sometimes we share a post which is for this, which is a website that does exactly that, that gives you songs connect with the grammar point that they perhaps are connected to or illustrate. So we'll find that link and share it in here for you and put it onto the step on the course when we upload this video. Okay, moving on. Just a thank you from Sharif there.
Oh, you're welcome, Sharif. Thanks for all your contributions.
Okay, another question from Nora here, just quickly. because we get this question a lot. I think this is, we've had this in, I think, our last two Facebook Live sessions with different people. How do you feel as native speakers when a foreigner uses slang with their foreign accent? I feel it's kind of weird when I hear someone using Spanish slang with a strong German or French accent, for example. You should hear me try it with a Scottish accent. No, that's that's weirder. But we've said this before. But David, would you like to say a little bit about this?
Actually, it's interesting. I've never thought specifically about slang and how it sounds. I think the only problem here I would see is the danger of using the slang in the wrong context, and that's where it might sound funny. If you, the danger with anything like slang or very informal languages goes back to our other questions, is when you use it in slightly the wrong context, it stands out and in the worst case is inappropriate. So I think in terms of actually hearing it with the accent, not a problem, but just the possibility of being in the wrong situation is where it might go wrong.
Yeah, I'd agree. I would never. I would never think of someone's accent necessarily when they're using the language, just what they say and whether it fits or not. Would you agree, Jenny?
Yeah, I would agree. I'm just thinking of someone I know, actually, a French teacher who lives here, and she uses lots of Scottish slang and Scottish words, and I think it sounds great with French.
Okay, this is a question really for week 4, but we can just very quickly just mention it just now. From Chainika Sarkar. Hi from India. How can I help students choose the right book to read? In another post, Chainika was mentioning that lots of kids that she teaches love to read Diary of a Wimpy Kid, but she feels that some of the language is not necessarily suitable for the age group that's there. So, I guess first thing I would say is come back in week 4 and we'll talk about this in more detail. But just at the moment, any recommendations that you would give for how to choose the right book? Chainika from the other question is talking about younger learners.
Right.
Well, I think it's good that she has an idea of what they already like, even if she doesn't necessarily feel it's appropriate for them. So it gives you an idea of the kind of interests and things that would motivate them. So I think, I can't think of a good example off the top of my head, but I think, finding something maybe similar, but with a perhaps more appropriate language for her context might be one way of going. And I guess another thing she could do is actually use the book that they do like as a way of teaching. It's good to highlight to children perhaps which bits of the language used in the are not necessarily appropriate for them to use. They should be aware that this is nice language, this bit is not so nice language, maybe you want to be careful where to use it. It's an opportunity to learn, as for students, because if you don't mention it to them, they might think it's all fine and get into trouble later.
Okay. Jenny?
Excuse me. Diary of a Wimpy Kid was such a successful book that I know there were like a number of other kind of slightly similar books that were written. So it would definitely be worth looking for them. I can't think of any of them off the top of my head, but it'd be worth looking into that and seeing if maybe the sort of similar books have slightly easier and more accessible language.
Okay. We've run out of time now, so I'm just going to go to one last question here, which I guess we can lead on to talking a little bit more about what's going to happen in the rest of this week and at the end of the week and everything. It's from Ahmad Solomon, who's saying, if someone asks you what British songs or singers would you advise, who do each one of you prefer? This is a difficult question, I think always, but because everyone has very different musical tastes. We've already established that I'm not a fan of a lot of groups. just the start. I could make a long list, but it would make me too many enemies if I carried on, so I won't. But everyone has different ideas and different tastes in this. What would you say about this, Jenny?
It's really hard without knowing what kind of music you like yourself, Ahmad, to think about what you might enjoy. But just purely from a point of view of learning English, well, we have mentioned the Beatles, so I'll not go into that again. But the Beatles, they are very easy to understand, and they've got nice, simple melodies. So I would recommend them as a starting point. And another band which I really like, and again have very clear lyrics, is a group called Fairport Convention. It's a bit vintage, but old. I just like them, so I would recommend you listen to them.
I guess that's one thing, isn't it? I mean, people just recommend the things that it's, there's nothing wrong with recommending the things you like, because if you like, it may be very good music that other people have not ever heard, and that's just it. But I think from like what you said at the beginning, from your point of view, really, I mean, when I teach teenagers, I always go the same as we do with our playlist. I always find out what they're listening to, and then select from it and say, this. No chance. This is not going to work. And we can do something with this and things like that. But David, anything? What would you say? Anything?
Actually, Sherry, who asked a question earlier, he sings "There Is a Light That Never Goes Out" on the singing set.
Yes,
that is a very good choice of song, I think, and perhaps not the best singer to follow as advice on how to sing well. But I don't mean Sherry, if I meant Morrissey. Sorry, I realized I should clarify that there. Sherry was fine. Very good indeed. And who else would be? I mentioned Paul Perrier, but some of their lyrics are not appropriate for all ages and all classrooms, and definitely not classrooms, actually. Elvis Costello, I'm trying to see what I've got across the room. I've got some T-Rex, I've got a CD of T-Rex hanging around, waiting to be played. Yes.
You're just showing your age now. I mean, this is...
We all are.
Yeah, well, these are actual records. Obviously the more contemporary things are on a playlist on some websites that we shall not advertise, because pay for them.
I think we'll look at this, on the course, and it'll come up. I mean, one of the things that the global playlist is one thing where people recommend countries, tunes from their own country. But I think it's good if we, a range of different stuff, because in the last few years, there have been so many great records, and so many, lyrics seem to be making a bit of a comeback in terms of the people that are successful at the moment and so on. And I think there's always something good to listen to and find out. And like Jenny said at the beginning, just find out what you really like, and because I think it has to be something that you enjoy listening to, and then look at the words and then decide whether you think it's got some value or not from a language point of view.
I mean, the only qualification I put on that, Neil, is for the teachers, where I think it's not always the best idea as a teacher to choose a song you like, because it may not have any meaning, or the music might not be enjoyed by the students. So I think what you were saying about asking students what they like in that case is, and hopefully finding at least one that is relevant to the students, and searching for music through themes or grammar points, rather than necessarily, like you said earlier, you're not a Beatles fan, but as Jenny said, they're very useful for teaching. So that, I think in that case you compromise about,
But I think on that same topic, like what you were saying, it's I've lost myself. I had a really good point just when you were saying that. Wait, what was the thing you said just before last again? Before you got onto the compromise part?
Before I got onto the Beatles again. It's gone as well. Can we play the video back, please? Jenny, were you listening to me?
I'm just mentally.
No, I know what it was. It was what you're saying, but it not always being a good thing. I mean, that's absolutely true, and that goes back to the same kind of problem. It was what Jenny was saying, what you said earlier about "You Are the Sunshine of My Life," is that's like part. Again, there's value in exposing people to songs that are part of the culture and part of the history and part of the shared knowledge of everyone in one culture. But at the same time, sometimes if it's part of your culture completely and it's not part of someone else's culture at all, and they have no awareness of it, I think it's useful to kind of be aware of that as well. And you say, this is a classic, everyone knows this, it's great, you'll love this, and you're met with a class that goes so it is, I think that question of kind of looking deeper for what to choose is a good one. Okay, that was I went on longer with that question than I intended to. Sorry about that. I think we're done with all of the questions at the moment for that. Thank you everybody for joining us and for all your great questions. As usual, if you have any more questions, we'll try and answer any important ones that we've missed, any ones where we can share resources or activities in the comments here. If you have any other questions, you can always ask them on our Facebook page here. And if you have any questions related to the course and the content of the course, of course, you can ask them on the course. Of course, how many times did I say course in that sentence?
I don't know. There was a lot of repetition there. I think you're
Yeah,
not getting no points in this round.
I was turning into a song. It's like, of course. Anyway, so Jenny, what's coming up? What have we got to look forward to?
Oh, we've got lots to look forward to. So next week is all about the UK countryside. So that's a brilliant week, which starts off with people sharing the views from their windows, which is always one of my favourite steps because you get to look all around the world. And then talking about different parts of the UK, some of the must-see places, and talking about the different countries that make up the United Kingdom as well. So a really interesting week with lots to learn.
And I think just for people that are not in the course yet, I mean, that's next week's a week when you can really go in so many different directions, because as Jenny says, we look at the different countries. You know, people ask us lots of questions about food. That's a great one to bring up in conversations there and talk about that in relation to different parts of the country and things. And of course, sharing your photos, that's great. David, anything?
I don't know. Can we share photos of food as well? Maybe the view of your plate.
We can do that.
That would make Tina happy for sure.
Yes. And I'm just thinking, actually, as you were saying about, I just have thinking of a challenge for people. Can they identify British towns which are also the names of food?
Ooh, that's a good.
They've got a week to think about that one.
I think I need a week. Apart from cheese, I think I need a week to think about that.
Well, all the ones in my head were names of cheeses as well.
Okay. Okay. Fine.
Yes.
Okay. Well, yeah, parts of the country, I guess. We've got puddings as well in there, I suppose. And perhaps a hot pot someplace too.
Yeah.
Anyway, we could
away lots of clues there, Neil.
Can you tell I haven't had lunch yet?
Country, David.
Sorry?
Towns or parts of the country, you say?
Well, I think Neil was going for counties with a hot pot.
Oh, Neil's
Towns.
I think any area, district, city, town, village, lake that you can connect to a food. I think post it next week.
Yep. I guess we could do a cake for sure.
Yeah. What's the prize?
Sorry?
Prize for this, David.
My respect. It's very hard to get, so I think that's very valuable.
Who's doing the end of week video this week?
I am. Yeah.
Well, there you go. There's your pre-challenge you can slip in at the end.
Yes.
Okay, right. Well, thank you all for coming. And if you haven't joined the course yet, make sure to check out the link in the post and sign up. It's great fun, and I know that we're enjoying it, and I know that all the learners in the course have said how much they're enjoying it. So make sure that you join us, and we'll see you there. Okay, bye for now.
See you, everyone. Bye-bye.